Tonight, President Trump is warning Walmart against raising prices, telling the nation's biggest retailer and grocer to, quote, eat the tariffs.
We will do our best to keep our prices as low as possible. But given the magnitude of the tariffs, even at the reduced levels announced this week, we aren't able to absorb all the pressure given the reality of narrow retail margins.
President Trump out with a very stern warning on social media saying Walmart, quote, should eat the tariffs, adding the company made far more than expected last year.
We're positioned to manage the cost pressure from tariffs as well or better than anyone. But even at the reduced levels, the higher tariffs will result in higher prices.
President Trump warning the nation's largest retailer against raising prices. Posting on Truth Social, Walmart should stop trying to blame tariffs as the reason. He then added the retailer and China should eat the tariffs.
Listen, has anyone ever noticed that we've allowed this administration to go from repeatedly claiming that this president's clueless tariff policy would force importing countries to pay rather than consumers, to now shamelessly threatening and blaming the companies that are doing exactly what Trump's detractors said they would do?
Our country can take in $120 billion a year in tariffs, paid for mostly by China, by the way, not by us. A lot of people try and steer it in a different direction. It's really ultimately it's paid for largely by China.
What about consumers? People out there.
They're going to be the biggest beneficiaries.
Yeah, critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope. The countries will pay.
If you have, America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports. You're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
No. What's going to happen?
Simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figured. I was always very good at mathematics.
Do you acknowledge that imposing more tariffs will ultimately cost consumers?
Well, what it really does is it penalizes importers from bringing goods outside the country into the country.
You talked a lot about tariffs. You look at the American economy, 40 million jobs rely on trade. It counts for 27% of GDP.
Okay.
If you cut that off, that's also going to have an effect on many, many business people here.
Yeah.
Tariffs also have another side. Isn't that something that you have to acknowledge?
No.
You could be plunging America into the biggest trade war. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
now they're going to have to pay for it. And they'll have to pay, and they'll pay hundreds of billions of dollars in pretty stiff tariffs.
We'll put tremendous amounts of money through all this money that will be taken in through tariffs and other intelligent things.
Do you acknowledge that consumers ultimately will pay more if there are more tariffs imposed?
So economists...
Do you just acknowledge that?
No, I don't, Kristen, because I think economists really disagree about the effects of tariffs.
We're going to protect those companies with strong tariffs because I'm a believer in tariffs. I'm not sure that you are. I don't think you are, but I congratulate you on your career. But to me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff.
Instead of asking this president why anyone should trust another word that he says, we've moved on to asking just how high prices will go and how much consumers are able to absorb for his ego. Nothing else should be discussed until everyone realizes that he flatly bullshit people during the campaign and has nearly normalized his price hiking policy as useful.
Is the president asking American companies to be less profitable?
I was on the phone with Doug McMillon, the CEO of Walmart, yesterday, and Walmart is, in fact, going to, as you describe it, eat some of the tariffs that, just as they did in 18, 19, and 20. The other thing, though, that we are seeing, that Doug passed along to me, that with their consumer, the single most important thing is the gasoline price. And gasoline prices have collapsed under President Trump. So we are seeing that. The other thing that will happen, that is a direct tax cut for consumers. Then the transportation costs are also a big input. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, again, why would Walmart or consumers eat the tariffs when it was promised that neither would after the president repeatedly claimed none of it would ever happen? The faster that we refuse to hold their feet to the fire on the lies that they told, the faster and more painfully that we pay the price for it. There's a reason that you don't trust politicians when they've been busted for lying, because they'll lie to you about anything else, like the ones that Basant told you about gas or grocery prices.
President Trump says foreign countries pay for the tariffs. He says they're going to make the country rich. And yet you have said, you've called them the Trump tariff tax. Why?
Well, first off, the initial reciprocal tariffs that he unveiled would be the largest peacetime tax hike on the American people in the history of this country. He has a sense that that other countries pay tariffs, when the reality is when Americans buy goods overseas, the company that imports those goods in this country pays the tariff, and more often than not, passes that along in higher prices to consumers. And I worry about inflation. We just heard Walmart made the announcement that they'll be raising prices in the wake of these tariffs.
People like Mike Pence knew all along that the discussion about what Trump's policies would do were valid, but he didn't have any reason to come out during the campaign to say what he's now saying in front of cameras. You know, we're up in arms about the cover-up of Joe Biden's declining health, but don't have any smoke for an entire party's cover-up of their direct knowledge of what their president's tariff policy would do to the everyday products that Americans buy. You know, so why aren't we upset about that? Where are the book tours on MAGA politicians' joy in watching you try to figure out how you're going to pay your bills when they saw this all coming? You know, why do we accept their blatant preference of putting their political party over the prosperity of the country? You know, we're just going to sit back and let snarling administration officials threaten companies for telling the truth to consumers about the price hikes, all to protect the image of the guy that brought all them on.
So it was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect, crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this, since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Is Jeff Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon.